Okay, so welcome everyone. I am Chef Liron from the Stir Family Teaching Kitchen at the Blaze Bernstein School of Culinary Arts. Most of you already know me. So today we are going to do a high holiday menu. It's not anything specific to any of the holidays, but it's dishes that you can use for the high holidays, and it has all of the flavors. I will have the recipes in front of me just so I don't forget anything. And it is a full menu in this 1 hour. So I have most of the things prepped and ready to go. And hopefully everything will be ready at the end. I have the camera. You can all see my hands here. I'll move the apple aside a little bit so you have a little bit of a top view of that and this area, and I will try and remember to look there and not at the screen. I have a screen over there so I can see everyone. So we are going to start with the chicken. Now, if you have any questions, go ahead and write them in the chat, or you can speak up and ask questions. I have Julie, who is with the camera filming me up front, so if there's any questions, also she will let me know. So we're gonna go ahead and start with the chicken. So I'll make sure perfect. And we have here, okay. So, oh, we didn't take pictures of the trays. Okay, so for the chicken, it's a pretty simple recipe. It's basically mixing all of the ingredients pretty much together and then cooking them in the Pyrex. So what I have here, we're gonna first put, first thing actually, we're going to get the chicken itself. And I have here the salt measured. And what I'm gonna do, I'm going to take half of that salt and I'm just gonna put it over the chicken just to season it a little bit before it goes in. The rest of the salt is going to go into the bowl with all the rest of the ingredients. Okay, so we're gonna set that aside, and then we have everything else. So I'm gonna put everything into a large bowl because I'm going to want to be able to get all the vegetables in it, to coat all the vegetables, but then also toss all the chicken in. So we wanna have a large enough bowl to be able to put all the chicken in it so it kind of gets covered with all of our stuff. So, and this is kind of just the Timis flavors, but we're cooking it with chicken. So what we have here, we have honey, olive oil, lemon juice. And I'm gonna whisk those together just to get all the right ingredients mixed together. Okay, and then we have the seasoning. And just so I don't forget any of the seasoning that we have here, I have everything already measured into this small bowl. Okay, so we have in here the black pepper, cinnamon, cumin, paprika, cayenne pepper. So all of that is in here. The cayenne pepper really isn't that strong. If you don't want it spicy at all, you can just take it out or just add a little bit more paprika, but it really doesn't, it's not spicy. You don't have to worry about that. So I'm gonna add all of these spices and the rest of the salt. Okay, and I'm gonna stir that together. Okay, and now I'm gonna put in all the vegetables. So the apricots and the prunes I've left cold. The garlic cloves I just peeled, and the carrot. So the thicker parts of the carrot, I'm gonna try and show you a little bit. So the thicker parts of the carrot, I cut a little thinner slices than 1 inch, just because it'll take a little longer to cook for the thicker parts. So instead of cutting them in half, I just cut them a little smaller for the thicker parts of the carrot, and then the end of the carrot is about 1 inch. And then for the onions, I just cut wedges. If you wanted smaller pieces, you can cut the wedge in half, or you can just leave it as a wedge. All of that goes in. And then I'm just gonna toss it. If you don't want your hands to get dirty, you can put on gloves if you have them. But I'm just gonna toss it like that. And then once it's all tossed, I'm just gonna put it into the items. And I'm pulling out the chicken, the vegetables, and I'm leaving all of the sauce as is in here, because now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put all the chicken in here and toss it in. And I'm gently just gonna toss it, making sure that all of the chicken gets coated. Now we do want the rest of these liquids in with the vegetables. So now I'm going to just tip it over and pour the rest of it down with leaving the chicken inside the bowl. Okay, I have those liquids, and then the other liquids I have is 1 cup of white wine. We're gonna pour that over. Wash hands. Okay, and now we're going to cover this in foil, and I'm going to roast the vegetables separately for 10-15 minutes, and then we're going to add the chicken to the vegetables. So the oven is already set at 400 degrees. You're going to put the vegetables inside. Okay, we're going to let that go for 10 minutes. Okay. Now we can set this aside. Okay, and while we're waiting for that to come out, we're going to start working on the cake. All right, so for the cake, okay, so for the cake, we have a few things we're going to do. So we have, I already have a pan here of the apples that are already caramelized. I'm going to show you how I arrange it. And then I also have a pan that I'm going to cook the butter a little bit with brown sugar so you can see how that's done. So for the cake mix, now in this recipe, this is margarine, it's not butter because I'm making chicken. You can definitely go ahead and just replace the margarine with butter. And then the applesauce, you can either keep it applesauce or do sour cream. Yeah.
So you're making, you can't use butter and chicken because of.
So if you keep kosher, you can't do butter and chicken. But if you don't keep kosher at home, you can definitely go ahead and use butter. I love butter. So if I could, I would have done this with butter. But we're gonna keep this part. Okay, so I have the butter in here, and then we're going to just mix that for just a second. Now, I left these out, so these are at room temperature. The margarine, the vegan butter will soften up much faster than regular butter will. So you want to just be aware and make sure you're not leaving it out for too long. So once I just put the margarine in for just a minute, I'm going to add all the sugar in. And we're going to let that go for a minute.
Liron, your KitchenAid mixer is a lot quieter than my KitchenAid mixer. Why is that?
You may need to adjust the motor. If it's is it a newer one or
no? Mine is super old.
That might be why.
So I assume I cannot adjust the motor. Like, what kind of person would?
Oh, you can reach out to KitchenAid. They have people that can come and look at it. But also because the older one, it may just be it may just be a little louder. That may just be how they did them before. Yeah. As long as you don't need to talk over the motor, it's fine. So, I'm going to put this a little faster. I'm actually going to scrape it once, and I'm going to show you the consistency of it. So I want to make sure that all of the sugar is mixed in with the butter, and that it's nice and smooth. Get anything. Oh, and then the other thing I just realized, for the chicken recipe, I don't think I wrote the temperature. You want the oven at 400 degrees. Okay, so once the sugar and the margarine are mixed together, okay, so now that we have those mixed together, I'm going to put in the egg and vanilla. If you're afraid that the eggshells will fall in, just crack them into a separate container before you put them into the cake mix.
Do you have a favorite vanilla you use?
I like the Costco vanilla. Vanilla is really expensive nowadays, so that's really the best you can get for a decent price. But vanilla is actually, the prices have gone up because there's a shortage of vanilla beans. At least that's how it's been for the past couple of weeks. Okay, so I'm just going to mix this for a minute. And then while that is mixing, I'm actually going to pull out the vegetables from the chicken. I'm going to take off the foil. I'm going to add the chicken just because I want to try and get it cooked in time. I will want to let it roast with the foil on top for about 15 minutes before you add the chicken. So we don't need the foil anymore. Actually, I'm going to put on gloves so I don't have to wash my hands again after this.
Around how long? Excuse me. How long are you comfortable leaving the chicken out in such a case that it's waiting?
You don't want the chicken to be cold. You actually do prefer it to be a little more room temperature. I would pull the chicken out about 30 minutes before you're going to cook it, just so it's not cold from the refrigerator. And then it's fine staying out that extra 15 minutes while you're cooking your vegetables. So I'm just going to arrange the chicken in there.
And it's going right on top of it.
It's going right on top of the vegetables, and then I'm just gonna make sure that there's room for all of the chicken.
chicken in a single layer?
In one single layer, yeah. You don't want the chicken to be on top of each other, but you want it in one layer. And then I'm just gonna pour the rest of the liquid that's left in the bowl. And that's it. Now it's gonna go into the oven until it's ready. Okay, so put that back in. I may rotate it in the middle, but that's just gonna stay in the oven until we're done. So that's our cake. So I have the eggs and the vanilla in here, and you're gonna see that it looks kind of broken. That's okay. Cake batters will look broken when you add the egg to it. Once you add the flour, it all comes together. So don't be scared if it looks broken. I'm just going to scrape that one more time. And you want to make sure that you're scraping the bottom of the bowl. See? Because you want to get all of that margarine or butter that's getting stuck on the bottom. You don't want it to just stay there. You want to make sure you're scraping all the way down to the bottom.
What temperature do you have the chicken at?
400 degrees. Okay, so now that we have that, the next ingredients that are going to go in is the flour with the baking powder and salt. Just gonna stir it lightly.
Roan, I'm a huge cinnamon and nutmeg fan.
Yeah.
Could I put cinnamon in this?
Definitely, you can add some cinnamon. I would add about half a teaspoon. I wouldn't add too much because cinnamon is very powerful. Okay, so we're adding all the flour. And I don't want to overmix it, so I'm just going to mix it for a little bit until it all comes together. And once you add the flour, also don't put the mixer on too fast, because then all the flour is going to be all over your kitchen counter.
I read in a lot of recipes not to overmix the flour. Why is that? What are we preventing?
So it'll just change the texture of the cake if it's overmixed. It'll be denser. And it also depends on the leavener that you have in there. A lot of times you make like banana bread. You don't want to overmix it, because if you overmix it with the baking powder, baking soda, it'll create those tunnels, and it'll also make it more dense and not as airy. Okay, so I literally just mix it until it's all come together. I'm going to scrape it one more time and add the applesauce. Just making sure it's all scraped, and now it's already thick, a thick cake batter. I'm gonna put in the applesauce.
I was getting it straight.
All right, and we're gonna put that back in, and again, it's only for a few seconds just to get it all mixed together. All right, so we have that here. Okay, I'm gonna scrape it off the paddle, and then I'm actually going to add the apple and mix it with a spatula and not in the mixer. Usually when I add the nuts and stuff like that, I prefer to add it with the spatula.
and not in the mixer, just to make sure that it stays whole and it doesn't break it up into pieces or anything. Right, so we add apple, and I'm just going to mix that together. All right, so our cake batter is made, and we're going to set this aside. There we have our cake batter. Now for the caramel apples. So I have here a pan. I have the amount of the margarine that we need for that. I'm going to turn it on. Maybe. Okay, we're going to get that melting a little bit. And while that's melting, I'm just going to show you for the apples. So I know it says they're to cut it into about 1/2 inch wedges. What I do, I cut the apple into, I peel it first, and then I cut it into quarters and pour the middle out of it. And then each quarter, I cut either to 4 pieces or 3 pieces. If it's a bigger apple, I'll cut it to 4 pieces. If it's a smaller apple, I'll cut it into 3 pieces. So once I have the corner of the apple that's poured, I'm just going to go ahead and cut the wedges, and that's it. Right? So you just want to get either 3 or 4 wedges out of each corner of the apple. And for the caramelized apples, you're going to want 2 apples. Inside the batter, you have 1 apple. I didn't say specifically which apples, because I feel like it can really be a bit interchangeable depending on what you like. I've actually used a combination. Honeycrisp is what is caramelized, and Gala apple is the one that is inside. You can also use Golden Delicious. Really, you can do whatever you like. So for the margarine, I'm going to let it melt.
Can you share with us why you chose Honeycrisp over there and Gala in the batter?
I think the Gala is a little drier. I don't want an apple that is too moist to go in the batter because I don't want it to keep the batter raw. I want the cake to be able to bake completely and not get raw from all the liquids that are in the apples. And I kind of like Honeycrisp. All right, so now that the margarine is pretty much melted and it's bubbling, I'm going to add the brown sugar. Right? And then I'm going to mix that together with the spatula. And it's going to look separated, but as it cooks, it's going to come together. So it'll take it a little time for the sugar to get mixed in with the butter. And that's okay, you don't need to think they did anything wrong. So that's going to take a couple of minutes. And while that's cooking, I'm actually going to just show you how I arrange the apples. So I have here this pan that's already caramelized. And I caramelize the apple about 3 minutes on each side, and I flip it over with tongs. You don't have to arrange it in any way to cook it. I actually just took the apples, poured them all onto it, and spread it out to make sure there's an even layer. And then flip them over, and then once it's cooled down, then you can arrange it in a circle. You don't have to do it right away. So once it's cooled a little bit, I'm just taking the tongs and I'm kind of arranging it in a circular way. And if you're having a hard time doing it, you don't have to. It's really just aesthetics. It doesn't have to be a circle. I'm trying to just put the smaller pieces for the center and not for the outside circle. That little piece here. And once I have one circle, I'll put it with the second one. And the apples, once they're cooked, they take up less space. So I know it'll look like in the beginning like you have too many apples for the pan. They'll shrink a little bit as they're cooking. So don't worry, 2 apples is perfect. And if you still think it's a little too much, eat this closer. All right, so the caramel here is already bubbling, but you're going to want to let it bubble for another minute or so just to get it a little thicker before you put the apples on it. Right, and then while that's cooking, I'm just going to show you how I place the batter on top of these apples. So once you've let it cool for about 3 minutes after the apples are all caramelized, I'm just using the spatula. I'm just taking a scoop each time and placing it on top of the apples. And we're gonna go all around. You don't want to scoop too much at a time because the batter is heavy and it's not gonna be as easy to move it around without moving the apples too much. You want to just make sure you can get enough of the cake mix everywhere. Getting some on the sides. It's really going to cover most of the pan already before you even spread it around with the spatula. Scraping the side of the spatula to get all the cake mix. Okay, and then once I have it all, I'm just going to gently move it around to get it an even layer on top. And as far as I can to the sides of the pan. It's not going to get to the end of the pan, that's okay. As it's baking, it's going to come to the sides of the pan. So I wouldn't worry about that. It's going to look like that with the layer of the butter on the sides. So you see how there's still, it's not all the way to the ends of the pan. There's still a layer of the butter on the side. And then I'm going to put that into the oven. Okay, and then this is ready. Once it's just a little bit thicker, you can put the apples on it and caramelize it each side for about 3 minutes. Okay, and since it's still warm, I'm actually going to show you how I don't touch the side of the pan. The pan is going to be hot, even if it's been sitting out for a minute. All right, so I'm going to show you how I flip it over. It's better to flip it over once it's still warm.
So this is the finished
This
cake.
is the finished cake. I already made one earlier.
You pulled it out like 10 minutes ago?
Yeah, I pulled it out about 10 minutes ago. So what I'm going to do, I don't have a platter that's big enough to cover the whole base, so I'm using this cutting board. And since it has 2 sides, one with the ridges and one without, I'm going to use the side without the ridges. I'm going to make sure it covers it completely. I have one hand with my oven mitt and one without a board stop. Okay, so I have one hand with the oven mitt and one without. The hand without the oven mitt, I'm going to place on top of the cutting board. And if you're afraid that something might spill, go ahead and do it over the sink. You're basically just going to go 1, 2, 3, flip it over. Oh, I forgot a step. That before you do that, it's coming off a little bit because it's non-stick, but you do want to this one. Take a spatula, and I prefer a spatula overnight because I don't want to scrape my pan. That's hot again, in case you were wondering. And I'm just going to loosen it from the sides of the pan. Okay, so you just want to loosen it before you flip it over. So we're going to put this on top again and flip it over. One apple
came off probably because I tried doing it before. There we go.
Ooh, if only you guys could smell it. Smells fantastic, of course.
All right, so we're gonna put this aside. Now I knew that it was pretty much done, but if you're not sure, you can test the center of it with a spear or something and just make sure that it comes out clean. And then the cake is all baked.
Is it okay to serve it hot, room
You
temperature?
want to serve it warm, actually. So I would try, I mean, it's okay room temperature, but I would try aiming it to be in the oven maybe as you're eating so that you can just take it out, flip it over once everyone's done eating so that they can eat it still warm.
And if you make it ahead, like in the morning, can you warm it like that? Can you warm it? Do you have to put it back, keep it in the pan? What would you recommend?
I would keep it in the pan if you're doing it that morning. Warm it up in the pan. That'll help keep the moisture in the cake, and then loosen off the ends and flip it over. That'll help keep it a little more moist. But you do want to make sure you cook it, you heat it all up completely, because once the caramel is set, it'll stick to the pan if it's not warm. So that's why you want to make sure you warm it before you can flip it over and serve it. Okay. And the next thing we have is the hummus. Okay, so this is a spiced carrot hummus. Let's check the time. So I have already roasted the carrots and garlic. And I've actually used the roasted garlic for something else for today. So I went ahead and I roasted more garlic than the recipe calls for. Then I pulled out those extra garlic cloves and used it for my other dish. So this is basically the color that you want it to be.
And can you tell us how you prefer to roast garlic? Do you wrap it in foil or?
No, so I left them with these are peeled already, but I left them with the skin on. And I just mixed the garlic and the carrots together with some olive oil. It's half the olive oil from the recipe. And then I put it on a tray and baked it at 425 degrees.
And we could do that in advance.
Yeah, you can do that in advance. Actually, if you do it in advance, then your carrots won't be as warm. Otherwise, when you blend it together, it'll still be warm.
So your preference is not warm carrots?
Not hot carrots. And then once the garlic is cool, that's when you're going to take them off. I would wait them to cool off completely because then it'll be a little hard. So we're going to use a blender actually, and not a food processor, right? That. Okay. So what we have the garbanzo beans, and this is 1 can of garbanzo beans. It's canned garbanzo beans, not the dry ones. And I rinsed them and strained them. So it's 1 can. And then we have tahini.
Do you have a favorite brand of tahini or place you buy it?
I usually buy it at Whole Foods. For most of the spices I get. They have a lot of Israeli brands here too, so. Lemon juice. Lemon juice. The other half of the olive oil. In there. We have the carrots and garlic. And the spices. So again, I have all the spices in the container. So we have cumin, a little bit of ginger, salt, pepper, cinnamon, coriander, and paprika. I use here paprika. So
that it won't be spicy, but you can definitely go ahead and use cayenne if you like that little bit of kick, if you want a little bit spicy. All of those go in.
Ron, I've always wondered the difference between Hungarian paprika, smoked paprika, regular paprika.
Hungarian and smoked, I'm pretty sure it's the same. They're gonna be a little more smoky. It'll be a little spicier than sweet paprika. But Hungarian and smoked is the same. It's harder to find that. The regular paprika, it just says paprika, is sweet. And then water. Now I'm putting the amount that's in the recipe, all of that water. You're probably gonna be needing a little more water, but you wanna do it according to how like the texture that you want. Okay, so we're gonna put that in the blender. And go. Okay, I'm just going to scrape the sides. And then when that's mixing again, I'm actually going to go ahead and rotate the chicken.
And just to confirm, when you rotate the chicken, that means rotating the pan. You're not moving the chicken within the pan.
Right, I'm just moving the pan around so that the part that was in the back of the oven is not moving in the front of the oven. Most ovens do not bake, so I just prefer to rotate it. If I can, I'm actually going to rotate the cake like a little bit as well. And I see that the carrots are still not really getting blended in there. Mix it up a little more. Want to make sure that the carrots get blended, because otherwise it's just not going to be the texture. You can see the inside of it is already smooth, but there's a layer on top that wasn't smooth. So I'm going to mix it together. It will be a little harder now to get the blade back in, and I see also that it's very, very thick, so I'm actually going to add a little bit more water. You can add either water or a little more olive oil, and that'll also help it blend the rest of the things.
Is there a difference between the water or olive oil in terms of the
Just
fine
flavor. I just prefer it to still stay a little more neutral, so that's why I'm going to add the water and not the olive oil. And I'm going to add that actually while it's mixing. That helps it evolve. Let's see if that's ready. Okay, I'm just gonna scrape it one last time, but that really helps pulling everything from the side. And I just want to make sure it has a nice and smooth texture. I'm gonna try and get down to the bottom with this spatula just to make sure I'm scraping all the way down. And we're gonna put it one last time and I'm gonna rotate the cake. Okay, so hummus is ready. And I'm already gonna put it straight into this serving dish. This side of the bowl. And you can definitely, I would taste it as you're mixing it. See if you like the seasoning. You can add a little more salt if you like. I have a lot of garlic in here, so if you don't really like garlic as much, you can use a little less, or you can add more the next time if you really like garlicky. I'm just gonna put it in the dish.
What would you serve the hummus with? I mean, cracker or pita?
Yeah, I would do either pita or crackers is great.
Is there a vegetable that?
Oh yeah, definitely. You could do peppers, carrots. Carrot hummus with carrots. Any vegetables, carrots, cucumber, any part of vegetable. You can even have a veggie platter with cauliflower. It would all be great with it. If you don't want as many carbs, go ahead and just do veggies, and you can dip it with that. So I'm just going to do a bit of a swirl on top. And you go in for a little drizzle. I'm gonna try to do a little drizzle. Big bottle for a little drizzle. Okay, just a little bit of olive oil on top. And that's ready to serve. So now that we have our hummus, mashed potatoes. So that's just a little bit of a conversation. I will bring them in front. So you can see them. So mashed potatoes is an easy dish that you can do for your holiday meal. And the ones I've done here, the mashed potato itself, again, because I'm making chicken, is non-dairy. So I use a little bit of the margarine instead of butter. And then the liquids that I used are a little bit of olive oil and vegetable broth to loosen it up. Obviously adding salt and pepper to it as well. And then I did 3 variations. So the first one, roasted garlic. So that was why I had the roasted garlic. So this is roasted garlic and rosemary. For this one, you actually want to add the roasted garlic while you're mashing it, because you want to mash the roasted garlic with the potatoes. You don't want big pieces of it. You want it to be nice and combined. And then I just added a little bit of roasted garlic and the rosemary on top for decoration. So this isn't the only roasted garlic, it's all inside of the mashed potatoes as well. The next is sauteed onions, caramelized onions. So here I use red onion, the same red onion that I used for the chicken. And I used olive oil to saute them. And then about halfway through, I added about a tablespoon or so of white wine, and I just let it cook for about an hour until it was nice and soft. The red onions are so sweet. It's an amazing addition. And the last one. This one might not look as appetizing right now, but well, this is a pesto mashed potato. So I made pesto ahead of time, and then I mixed the pesto into the mashed potato. So what happens to pesto, it always turns brown because it oxidizes when it is in contact with the air, kind of like avocado turns brown and apples. The top is going to be brown, so obviously if you're serving this, you may want to do it just last minute, right before. But inside it's still great, so you can still see the difference, and you can just stir it up just before you serve it. So even if it's brown on top, just stir it up just before you serve it, and then it's going to be fine. You'll see how it's nice and beautifully green. And when you're serving it, you can just add a little bit of the pesto on top, just so it'll be nice and bright as well. For the pesto one, I used less salt in the mashed potatoes itself because the pesto itself is salty, so you don't want to overdo it. Just be careful when you're doing it with pesto. So I would always use less salt, taste it as you're going, and add more salt. So these are 3 mashed potatoes. So we have the roasted garlic and rosemary, we have the caramelized onions and pesto. We have our cake, and we have our hummus. Let's see if the chicken is ready. Okay, so we have our chicken. Now, we're gonna take it out now. You see it's already brown on the top. You may want to leave it just for a few more minutes. And obviously check the temperature. If you can, have a thermometer. Make sure on the thickest pieces of the chicken that it's reached 165, just so you know that it's fully cooked. And you can also check to see if the carrots are soft. Those are going to be the vegetables that are going to take the longest to cook. Just see if the carrots are soft. This carrot is a little harder still. You can leave it in for a little longer, but this is what we have. We have the chicken, mashed potatoes, our dessert, and the hummus. All right, does anyone have any questions? And a little pomegranate, just for the holiday.
That's our menu. Does anybody have questions for Chef Liron? You can say them out or you can put them in chat and I'll share.
Yeah, Liron, what's the oven temperature for the chicken? I missed that.
400.
Thank you.
What's on top of the garlic mashed potatoes? You kind of cut off.
It's rosemary and roasted garlic.
And is the rosemary in the potatoes as well?
There's a little bit of rosemary inside the potatoes as well, yes.
Anybody want to taste?
Here, let's cut a piece of the cake. Yeah, I was told I never taste my food.
Yeah. How can you trust a chef who's not tasting her food, right?
I tasted before, I just don't taste it during my classes.
Don't you worry, guys, though. We have a big staff. Everybody gets to taste everything. It's one of the perks of the job.
perfect and moist. I'd serve it with ice cream. We have to do cake first. I mean,
So Liron, you made a whole holiday meal in about 50 minutes.
Secret is having all of it prepped, but yes. All right. Anyone have any other questions?
Doesn't the pesto have like Parmesan cheese in it? Or how do you make that
okay,
pesto?
so the pesto, obviously no cheese. It's actually a different variation. So there's no Parmesan in it, and there's also no pine nuts. I did this for Julie. So it's done with sunflower seeds instead of pine nuts. And I just took out the Parmesan. I didn't add anything instead. I just took out the Parmesan, and it's still fine, and it's great to use